Hey guys, welcome to our YouTube channel, the channel that is all about learning. This week we're going to continue where we left off from last week with our Twitter API version 2 automation video series. Okay, so in this video series I'm going to be taking you through the new Twitter API version 2 and showing you some of the cool things that you can do with that API, specifically if you are coding with a Python. So if you're just catching up with us, make sure that you go to our video list on our channel, which is Skolo Online, and go through that that video list, and you will see that 7 days ago we released that video where we actually showing you how to get your API keys and how to get started with the version 2. So today we're going to pick up where we left off. So there's a couple of things we're not going to cover in this video that we've already covered in last week's video, so probably that's a good place to start. And then once you've watched last week's video, then you can come back here and continue with this week's video. This week what we are going to cover is we're going to show you how to actually search Twitter for important information, especially if you are running a business and you want to do lead generation specifically. That's what I'm going to be using this part of the video series for, is being able to search Twitter for important topics. Like, let's say I'm in the CRM business and I want to search every time somebody says something about CRM, I want to be able to pull up those tweets so that I can either retweet them or follow up with that person, and perhaps they're looking for recommendations and I can DM them and tell them, hey guys, I am selling a CRM, and that's how you can get in touch with me. So this is a very, very useful feature if you want to grow your business, being able to search Twitter for certain leads. And there are companies that actually do this for a business. There are some lead generation tools that you can subscribe to, pay a good $50 a month just to be able to get this type of lead generation that I'm going to show you exactly how to do yourself on Twitter. All right. Now, if you're new to this channel, as usual, or you're watching this video for the first time, make sure that you like the video and that you subscribe to this channel so that you will get notified every time that we produce a new video on this channel. And also make sure that you open up the description box, because there's going to be a lot of useful links that I'm going to post there, including a link to our GitHub. I think I will make this code available on GitHub, and you can go there and copy it and use it and test it out. But I highly recommend that you don't just go to GitHub and copy the code, that you actually go through this video step by step, because I'm going to cover everything in this video. And if you're going to ask me a question about something that doesn't work from the code, at least try watching the video first before you send me messages asking me stuff that doesn't work, because I cover everything step by step. And if you actually just follow the video, you shouldn't have issues with the code that I'm going to publish at the end of the day. All right. And our social media channels are also in there. I will also try and do a written up tutorial on our Medium publication, so you can go and read up the same thing that I'm going to be explaining on this video on Medium if you prefer to read as opposed to watching a video. So it's really up to you. So go through the description box, check our social media links, check the video timestamps. If you want to jump over to a certain part of the video and you don't want to watch the whole video, you don't have to. That is why we've got the timestamps in the description. And let's get learning. All right, so I'm going to close those two boxes, and then we're going to get started here today. So there's going to be a lot we want to cover today, but what I will start with is our Tweepy client documentation. All right, so last week I explained the connection between the Tweepy client version 2 and the actual Twitter version 2 API itself. So I'm not going to go through the details of the Twitter version 2, because I've already sort of transitioned you to Tweepy, because Tweepy is a Python client that specifically has already coded the Twitter version 2 in it, and it helps you sort of just hit those important endpoints very, very quickly in one line of code. And that's what we're going to use. All right. So definitely watch last week's video and see how we transitioned from working off the Twitter documentation directly to using a Tweepy for the code that we're going to be doing. And the specific endpoint that we're going to hit in this video today is going to be the search recent tweets endpoint. Last week we looked at being able to search for users and being able to find users' followers and being able to follow people on Twitter, which is a very useful way of trying to grow your Twitter account by following people automatically. I showed you how to do that last week. There's a lot of other things we did, but today we're going to assume you've got all of that figured out. You know how to post a tweet and all of that, and we're going to focus on searching the Twitter API for, searching the Twitter sort of timeline for specific, tweets that you can do something with later on. Okay. Now, if you go to the Tweepy documentation, which I will also link in the description below, just search at the top there for the API endpoint that's called search_recent_tweets. Okay, so that's the API that we're going to be working with. And if you get there and you just sort of hover over it, you will see the sort of a dialog box opening up, and then there's a lot of information there as to how you can use this endpoint to to do sort of requests and from Twitter. And by now you should have your API keys and all of that, and I've shown you how to do that in the last video, right? So let's just basically copy this line over there. We're gonna copy it, and then we're gonna go to a Python script where we're going to write the code that we're going to be using. All right, you can see everything is sort of working off this client authentication endpoint. So you basically need to get a client, which means you need to authenticate yourself using your API keys. All right, so initially you need to obviously initiate this client object. All right, and if you just go to the top of the documentation page itself, you will see that the Tweepy client at the top there gets sort of initiated in this method. Okay, you need the consumer keys, the consumer secret, you need the tokens, the access token, and the bearer token. All right, and I've got the code to help you get that client initiated. All right, so you're going to use Tweepy. Of course, you have already imported Tweepy at the top, and you've already installed Tweepy inside of your virtual environment. Okay, you're going to say tweepy.client, and then you're going to specify your bearer token, your consumer key, your consumer secret, your access token, and your access token secret. And we've got all of this stuff saved in a different file that we've called config. And inside of that file, this is what we've called those variables. And if you watch last week's video, you should already have this set up. All right, so basically I'll probably just refer you to last week's video if you're not sure how we get to this function of getting the client. All right, so this function is a function we'll run every time just to get ourselves authenticated with Twitter, and then we use this client to call the different endpoints of the API that we want to work with. All right, so the first endpoint that we're going to work with obviously is this one, search recent tweets. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that over there, and we're going to paste exactly like that, search recent tweets. And then basically, when you're searching recent tweets, if you see what I have blocked out there, all right, you basically all you need is a query and maximum results. Okay, so you can get, I think, up to 100 results, and that's only if they're available. So if you're searching for something like, I don't know, Elon Musk, all right, and you want to search 10 tweets that are mentioning Elon Musk, it will only return 10 tweets if there is 10 tweets available that mention Elon Musk. Then it will cap it at 10. If, for example, within the last 7 days, there's nobody that mentioned Elon Musk within the search parameters that you've given it, it's going to return maybe none, or it's going to return only 2. So it only really returns what's available. So keep that in mind, that just because you've specified 10, it doesn't mean that, okay, fine, it's going to be 10 automatically. It will be 10 provided 10 is available. But I think you can get up to 100 maximum, and then after that you have to do pagination, which we're not going to cover in this tutorial. We're just going to assume that there's no need. At any given point, let's say maximum, I want to just get 10 results if they are available for whatever search parameter that I've given it. Okay, and then once you've done that, you're going to say, so I'm not going to use this one because I want to be very specific. I want to get if there's media, annotations, whatever created at. So I'm going to actually not use that function instead. And if you look at the documentation, you can see all the different, variables that you can include. Your expansions, your media fields, your place fields, since ID, start time. So you can even specify, when you want that search to start and when you want it to end and so forth. There's a lot of all of that information that you can specify. So I've decided that I'm going to work with text fields, created at, and context annotation, and then media fields, preview image URL if it's available, and the expansions, we're going to be working with attachments, media keys, because we want it to return the media objects if they are available, so that we can, we can sort of have a look there. Or you could just delete all of this, and you can just say tweets is that you just basically want to get, any tweets within the last 10 days, and you're gonna search for it. So once you get it, remember what we did last week. When you get this thing returns like a whole object, and within that response object that you get returned on, you basically want the data part of the response. So every time we will specify that we want that whatever is the response you get there, you want the data part of that response. Okay, and then once you get the data part of that response, it's going to be in a list. So it's going to return it in an array format, and then you can then double check that it's not none and that there's something inside of that list. Okay, and it's also the list is not an empty list. All right, and this tweet data is not an empty list. Or actually, let me just say the length of this. All right, so we're gonna say the length of this thing is greater than 0. So what this is gonna do is just gonna check that that we returned something, and that the length of what we returned is greater than 0, so that you can iterate through it and do something. And if you didn't return anything and the length is not greater than 0, then this just function will give you an empty string, and then you'll know that if it's an empty string, there's nothing there. And then actually instead let it return an empty list instead, because we are iterating our results through our results on the other side, and it will be difficult if we're trying to iterate. We'll get an error trying to iterate through a string. So once we do that, we can then call this function. All right, so I've already written this function for you. We just basically gonna call it at the bottom there. We're gonna say that the tweets is basically we have to give it the search. We have to give it that search query. Okay, so remember this function is taking in a query, and that query is a query that we're giving it there, and searching the recent tweets with a query. If you go back to the documentation, the query is the first thing that you must give it, and it's basically, it needs to be one rule for matching tweets. If you're using a standard project at the basic access level, you can use a basic set of operators and make queries for up to 512 characters long. If you're using an academic research project at the basic level, you can use all available operators and make queries up to 1,005 characters long. Okay, so basically, the first time you get your API keys, you're just gonna get a basic standard access. And if you want academic access so that you can search for more things, you can request Twitter to give you that, and I'm sure you're going to go through some approval process. But for what we're doing, I think we're just going to be searching basic simple things within our own account, stuff that's useful for our business. So this is not going to be sufficient for you trying to build a whole app for other people to use. This is sufficient for you just building your own thing, or even for testing. So you can do this for testing in the beginning, and then once you've built an app and you're ready to sort of expand it with more search functionality, then you can go and reapply it for Twitter to give you basic access, to give you more advanced access. And then at that point, probably maybe you have to pay for it. I'm not sure, I've never gone through that level. Then you'll have more query functionalities that you can work with, and and so forth. So for now, we're just going to be working with the basic access level stuff. So in my specific case, I'm just trying to search for anytime somebody or a tweet has mentioned the words CRM software. So it's basically searching through Twitter for these keywords, CRM software. Okay, so you can have as much as you like and say CRM software recommendations, perhaps. All right, this is probably even more advanced. More specific, that if somebody specifically was asking for CRM software recommendations, you can check if there's somebody that has searched for that. And then if this result is more than for X in that, so maybe what we want to do in here, we just want to check that if the length of these tweets, all right, is greater than 0, we then want to iterate through that and print that. But if it's not, we just want to print no matching query. Okay, no matching tweets found. Right, so basically then if you do, then it will tell you that nothing was found, and then you'll know, and maybe you'll then make your search a little bit broader around CRM or whatever it is you wanted to search for. Right, so I hope this makes sense what we're doing here. If I have to summarize again for you what we're doing here, let's start at the top. you basically need to make sure you import Tweepy. You have to import config, because config, that's where we have kept all of our API keys and secrets. It's a file that we sort of keep separately. It's over there, it's in the same location. So it's that file over there. It's in the same sort of like root directory that I'm working from. I'm not going to open it now because I don't want to show my API keys anyway. I did show that last week, so it will be exactly the same as what we had last week. Okay, and in this specific case, import random. We're not using a random for anything here. And we're also not using JSON for anything. But I'm going to leave JSON because we always, every now and then, end up having to use it anyway. Then we start with creating this function that says get client, and this function is exactly the same as what we have right at the top of our documentation, which I will keep this link in the description below. And basically you're just initiating that auth object. This is similar with the version 1 where you would create the auth API object. All right, so it's a similar thing. And then you sort of return that. And then when we're running about whatever function we're running, we will start by creating the client, which is that get client function, which is that one there. And then it returns this client object that has been authenticated with your API keys, right? Then once you do that, this is where the magic happens. Okay, search recent tweets with a query. This query will come into the function when we initiate the function at the top, and then we're going to just specify the max results that we want if they are available. And then after that, we want the data part of the response, and then we're going to create a list, and then we're going to sort of like iterate through that response. If it's not none, and if the list is has objects in the list, and then we iterate through it, we create our own new object, and we get the ID and the text of the tweet. All right, so you'll see that a tweet, when it comes in, it has a tweet ID and a tweet text. All right, and that's just, you can even read the documentation, but you can even go back and read the actual Python, the actual tweet documentation. You'll see how I figured out that when it returns the tweet object, the tweet object has got an ID and a text. All right, and then we want the text of the tweet, we want the ID of the tweet, because we're going to use the ID later, and you'll see what we're going to use the ID for. And then we're going to append this object into that list. So this is going to be now, this result will now be a list of objects. Each object will contain an ID and a text. And then otherwise, if there's nothing in there, we'll return an empty list. And then after that, we will then just return this results. And this results is the list, which is what you have over there when we're running this function tweets and giving it that what you call query, object to query. And then we're gonna, if the length is greater than 0 there, we will go through that and print each and every tweet that we're getting. Otherwise, we'll just print that there's no matching tweets that were found. All right, so I'm gonna just save this. I'm gonna push my changes, and then I'm gonna run this function, and then we're gonna see what we get. All right. Coolio. So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna clear all of this and make sure you have your environment on already. So I've already done all of those, sort of like admin stuff in the background. My environment is running. I've installed Tweepy in there. I've run this because I've used this last week when I was showing you the other parts of the API. So I'm good to go. So at this point, if you didn't watch last week's video, there's a bit that you have to do to get to this point that you can run your Python function. You need to make sure you've installed Tweepy. You need to make sure that the config file is in the same directory. You need to make sure that your bearer tokens work properly. I tested this already in Postman, that my keys are correct. There's a couple of sort of like basics you gotta do, hence I recommend you watch last week's video. But if you're good to go and you've tested already, your keys are fine, you can then run Python search.py, because this is what I've called the file. The file is called search.py, and inside the virtual environment, you just need to use Python, and then you can run this line of code. Of this line here runs that Python file. So no matching tweets that were found. That's okay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try something else. So no matching tweets for recommendations. So let's save that instead. Actually, I'm just going to open it nano from this side so that I can just make the change quickly on the file there. And no matching tweets found. So I'm going to change the query. So instead of saying CRM software recommendations. I'm just going to say CRM software, all right? And I'm sure then we should be able to find something, all right? So let's run it then, and you see then there is some tweets that we're able to find, okay? You can see over there, this is an object, this is a tweet ID, all right? And then this is a text of the tweet. And this text was restaurant POC software, best POC software, and there's a link over the HTTPS, whatever. So you can see this is a tweet, this is another object, this is another tweet, this is another object, this is another tweet, this is another object. So basically it did find a couple of things that are talking about CRM, best CRF roofing software. So this is very useful for lead generation, I think, definitely on Twitter. And that's what I'm going to use this for, right? So I'm going to be searching on a regular basis every time somebody's tweeting about something specific, because they're gonna, you get a lot of people just tweet, recommendations of this. And if you're running a business, you have something like this running and you're checking the tweets, and then you go and you get that tweet ID. So I'm gonna show you that. Let's go to Twitter now, right? Let's go to Twitter now. Not explore. Yeah, let's explore. It's fine. So this is my Twitter, and then I'm going to go to, actually, let me go to home, and I'm just going to pick a random tweet, and I'm going to click on it and show you how useful that, that's our free invoice software, guys. And they also tweeted about the CRM, but I see that didn't come through. Okay. All right. So if you see this tweet page, right? Twitter.com free invoice status. Okay, so this is a status. I want to specifically find a tweet ID. All right, Skolo Online status. All right, so this is a tweet ID. All right, so this over there is a tweet ID, and it's off the tweet, what you call it, the tweet URL. I mean, it's off the, what is it, the profile of that tweet. I want to search for something else. Just want to see. All right, so it looks like, although you do get the tweet ID and the status, you almost always need to know who is the person that wrote the tweet, because this will be the sort of the tweet, the username of the person that created the tweet, and then under their statuses, and then you'll get the tweet ID, and this will tell you, okay, so the tweet ID alone is not going to be enough for you to find the URL of the tweet on Twitter. Okay, so that was something that's very important to note, because I wanted to be able to directly use the tweet ID to go back and find the URL of the tweet, so that I can know, I can find that tweet back on Twitter, and either retweet to it or speak to that person, or tell them that yes, definitely, if it's a request for recommendation, tell them that yes, our company definitely can help you with that. There has to be a way that you can follow up with that person, but it looks like Twitter doesn't actually have a direct URL link to a tweet ID. You have to sort of go through the person's profile so that you can, so that means that we need to find a way to get that person's profile user ID, so that we can then say status and then get the tweet ID and be able to get that tweet. So let's do that next. Okay, so we've gone through, I've written the code in the background so that I don't waste a lot of your time right here. But I think I finally found a way to get what I really want out of this, because let's just recap. What I'm trying to achieve here is I want to be able to create an app that searches for a specific keyword so that I can use it for lead generation. And when I get that specific keyword, I want to be able to pull that tweet, and then I want to be able to go to that URL of that tweet on Twitter directly from my application. So I need my application to be able to give me the Twitter URL that I need to go to be able to access that tweet. And then so that I can do whatever I want. When I get to that URL, I can decide, I want to retweet this person, or I'm going to follow them or DM them, whatever it is that I'm going to do with them, for my own lead generation. But I need to be able to find the tweet that talks about what I'm talking about, and then be able to go to the URL of where that tweet is. And I've gone through this. Let me just take you through my thinking journey and how I ended up with the code that I ended up with. Because if you look over here, right, this is the function that we're using, search recent tweets. And search recent tweets, according to this documentation, you should be able to return, if you look at the document, you should be able to return, there is a place field, there is a start time, and there is a tweet field. So basically you have tweet fields. You should be able to return tweet fields. All right, and let me just double check what's here in this tweet field. You can just like sort of open this in a different window and see what is available in tweet fields, okay? And tweet fields should be able to like, give you more information about the tweet that you want, like your tweet information, tweet ID and so forth. But what I'm looking for specifically is not tweet fields. I'm looking for user fields. So I don't want to be able to get that tweet and then I want you to tell me the person who tweeted the tweet, because when you look at the Twitter URL, if you go to a detailed page for a tweet, you see the Twitter URL, you see the username of the person that tweeted it, and then it's their status, and then that's the tweet ID. So I already have the tweet ID from my initial function, but I don't have this URL of the person that created this tweet. So that's where the challenge was when we looked at it the first time. And if you look over there, I tried actually as much as possible to try and get the user information, and the best that I could do was to get a user field. All right, and when you get a user field, you can specify these are the fields that are needed for the user, and it will give you the user field. But the way the Tweepy API works is that when you request the user fields, it actually creates a new object called includes. And inside of that new object, it's next to the response object. It's a separate list of the users that you're asking for. And then it's a challenge trying to figure out which user goes with which tweet, because there's just a list of users that is included there in the user field, in the includes. And actually I tested this a couple of times. You get more users than tweets, or sometimes you get more tweets than users, and you can't actually map the users to the tweets themselves. So what I ended up deciding to do is fine, I'll just get the tweet ID, and then I'm going to use a different endpoint, which is the get tweet endpoint. Once I have that Twitter ID, I can then specifically call that get tweet endpoint to get to the other fields that I need for the user. So if you look at the get tweet endpoint, you can specify the ID, and then you can specify the user fields directly, and then that user field will be that user that created that tweet. All right, and then you can get their username, and then you can use their username to find their detailed page and their post, and then you can use the user ID and their post to find the URL of where that tweet is. Does that make sense? So if you guys do this and you have a faster way of doing it, let me know, especially if you're using the Tweepy API. I think if you use this specifically, because I also went through this documentation, you can, if you're just using this directly, you can actually get it returned the way it should be, because according to this, if you have the optional fields specified, you should be able to get the data with the author and the created at all of that in there. But I tried this on Tweepy, and Tweepy doesn't do this. Okay, Tweepy doesn't give me that information. Even on the user side, it doesn't give me the detailed of, and even though I've specified I want the verified username and all of that, whether it's verified or not, working off the Tweepy API, it doesn't give me this. So maybe what I will do in future, I will convert this from Tweepy and just do a proper curl request like that with the authorization, and just like cut Tweepy off and work directly with the Twitter API. I think with that, if you do it that way, you're gonna get a better result. And I'll probably convert my code next time to do it this way, because this is specifically what I want. I would want to know if the user is verified. I would want to get that author information directly in the data object, because if I could do that, then I wouldn't have to do a second request and use up all of my because what's happening now, I have to do two requests. I have to get a request for the tweet itself, then I have to do another request for the user. And I have gone through this documentation and what's written there, or going through the recent one, specifying the user parameters, specifying these user fields. And what happens is that it just gives you a separate list under the includes, and then that list actually, it doesn't quite match always with the tweet list, and sometimes you get tweets that the user is not returned for that tweet. So that's difficult. So I'm not going to use that anymore. Instead, next time I will actually just use the direct API call. But nonetheless, the way I've done it now is that I have instead, like, I'm going to make two requests every time. I'm going to do a recent request, which returns the list of tweets. Then when I get the tweet ID, I'm going to then use the get tweet API endpoint, use that to give me the tweet information, where I specify the user field directly. and then it will give me the user information that is associated with that tweet. And I've already tested this, and it works for a couple of URLs that I worked with, but I'm going to take you through the code now, what I've just explained now, okay? So I've refactored the code a little bit. Instead of calling the client every time inside of a function, I'm going to call the client once when I run the code, and then I will just pass in the client into the different function every time, so that I don't sort of authenticate multiple times every time I'm hitting the API, because then I'll only authenticate fewer times, and then I will be using fewer calls. Keep in mind that because you have limitations with this Twitter API, the fewer calls you have to make, the better off for your app. If you can minimize the number of calls you make, it will also save you time. Your apps will load faster, but also, you know, you will not reach your limits very, very quickly. So try as much as possible to limit the number of API calls you have to make. If you don't have to make, if you can make one API call just to do the authentication once in your app, and then you use that object every time, and it will work, rather do it that way. So then I'm going to call the get client at the beginning of my code. So all of these are functions. Okay, you can even like write them in a different file if it will make more sense for you. Then you can call the client once, and then the tweets. This is when we're going to do the search tweets, and then we can then pass in the client and the search term that we're searching for, right? So this search tweets is the client and the query. It does exactly the same thing it did before, so I haven't changed this code. It just returns the result with the ID and the text, okay? So then what I can do is that inside of my app, I can display the ID and I can display the text, and I can get more information about that, right? Then when I want to then get more details, like let's say I want to now go visit the detailed page for that tweet, I'm going to have a second API call, which is this get tweet, where I pass the client and the ID, and then I use that get tweet API endpoint. I specify the ID, and then I can specify the expansions there with the user ID and the user fields to be the username. And I don't even know why this, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here. But the moment you do expansions, user ID, it just returns a user object. And the user object for Tweepy, for some reason, is always, despite what I specify there, is always just the, you know, the ID, the username, and so I don't know if I'm doing something wrong here. It always returns the ID, the username, and the name of that user, which is all I need anyway. But then I don't know why then they have this thing for specifying the user fields, and maybe I'm missing something. If you're watching this and you know, can give me an explanation, please leave a comment below, or whether I should just get rid of this user field completely and only work with the expansions user ID, because then it will expand and create that other include object, and instead of that include object, there will be the user object in there, and then I can then access the user ID that way, or the username. So then once you've done that, you've done the get tweet, you can then come down here, and then you can call the client, you can search tweets, and then this one returns a list of tweets. Then we're going to iterate through all those lists. I mean, all the tweets in the list, if the list is greater than 0, and then we're going to then call get tweet on each and every one of them specifically, okay? So get tweet, and then we're going to pass the client object and the tweet ID. The tweet ID is that tweet ID which was saved over there. It's inside of the tweet object ID, and then we're going to create another object, which is now the text, the ID, and now we can add the username in there, all right? So we can now add the response from this TWT, and then we have to access it via include, so not data, because if you say twt.data, you will get the tweet itself, the tweet ID, and the text of the tweet. But if you do the includes, then it will add the expanded objects in there, which is the extra information that you get from the expansion. And then the includes, I specifically asked for the author ID expansion, so I can access it via users. All right, so it gives me a user object, so it will be a list of users. But because in this case, I should only have one user, because I've only given it one user ID, I will get the first object in there. All right, so this will always be a list. All right, so, and then it will be now a list with one item inside. So that's what I'll access. I'll access the first object in this includes.users. And then I want the username there. All right, so then I have the username, the text, and the ID now inside of one object. And then I create a list of those objects that include the username, the ID, and the whatever. Now I've got the username. I can go into my list of objects and build up the URL. Okay, so I could build up the URL. This is where, if you look at the URL, this is where the username is supposed to go. All right, so I'm going to put in the username there, and then this is where the tweet ID is supposed to go. Okay, so I can get X username, X ID, which is the tweet ID, and then I can print all my URLs. And you'll see I've actually run and tested this. I can test this with you now, and you can see what happens. In fact, what I'll do is that I'll change this, you know, search functionality. I don't know, let me search for what's trending on Twitter today. Let me just see. I want to try and find something else so you can see. Uncle Waffles action essay. Okay, let's search for that. Okay, action essay. Right, so this is action essay, like that. Okay, so there should be more than 10 tweets with this action essay, and we're gonna search for those tweets, and then we're gonna put them in a list, and then we're gonna find the text, the username of the person who tweeted the tweet via get the tweet method, and the ID of the tweet, and then we're going to build up the URLs up to 10 of them, and we're going to then be able to check if we go to those URLs, if they've built correctly, because what we want to do next in our application is that we want to create now I'm going to do a proper Flask app where you can enter this search term function, you know, like not programmatically, but you can have a form that you can then on the front end where you can search the term that you want to search for, and then you run that, and then in the background it runs this function, and then it returns for you this list, and then you get that list over there, and then you go through it. We'll display the text for you so you can see what the tweet is about, and then you can decide, do you want to go to the detailed page? In fact, maybe we can have another button that says retweet. We can have another button that says view it in Twitter. We can have another button that says, you know, I don't know, DM the person who has done the tweet or whatever, you know, and you can build a function that does that inside of, and you can build different functions for those different ways you can engage with the tweets around your specific areas of interest. And that will be a nice home build, self-build sort of Twitter bot that you can use yourself to specifically search for interesting things. I know you can do it in Twitter as well. All right, you can come here, and every time you can come and search for something specific and then decide whether you want to retweet or whatever. But now we're doing it programmatically inside of our own application, and this is really great for lead generation. And that's what I'm definitely going to my initial thoughts of building this function was around. Of building this app was for my own personal business lead generation purposes. Okay, and then if you do this quite daily, or you even automate this, the reason why we're doing this with an API, of course, and why we're not doing it on Twitter is that then you can run this on a schedule, and you can have this email you these things on a regular basis, even SMS them to you, so that you can decide, you know, it's SMS you including the links, and you can, like, you know, you can be sitting and you get your SMS notification. Oh, these are the latest tweets. Okay, cool. Let me retweet that. Let me you know, DM that. Let me ignore that one, doesn't refer to me. You know, like you can build an automated tool around this to help your lead generation, you know, automatically, or you can have it sending you emails every 2 hours whenever it finds the interesting topics. And you can even start searching more than one title at a time. You can find interesting titles that are interesting to you, and you can then, you know, have those emailed to you or SMS to you, and then, you know, or just you know, do it from your own function. So there's a lot of use cases that you can use this for, you know. And so let's run this. All right, so let's run it. I'm talking too much now. Let's see. Let's run this. Let's push all the changes. All right, action essay. All right, and then let's push this. And then, so that's good to go. Let's run this search.py. So it'll take a while to run because it's gonna go through 10 tweets, and then it's gonna go and do another. So it's doing like different whatever. It's doing I don't know, multiple requests. It's doing the first request, and then for every one of those things, it's doing another request to get a thing. That's why it takes a bit of time. So I'm just gonna copy that, and I'm going to like go to Twitter and paste that URL over there. All right, and let's see. So there you go. There's a tweet right there by Zamu. Who somebody retweeted this. It's hard just to accept that the action essay is mini DA. Whatever. So you can come here, you can decide, oh, you want to also comment, or you want to retweet this. So you're getting tweets only around this search topic that you were looking for, right? Let's find another random one here. Tweets that are talking to this one. All right, so all of these should be around action essay. So there should be tweets that contain something related to action essay. So there's the next one. Helen, whatever, did some stuff. Okay, I'm not gonna read that there. But anyway, you can see, you get the drift of what we're doing here, right? And then you're gonna do the next one over there. So that's a search as well. Let's see what's in there. All right, this is cool. There you go. Action essay, arrogant, this and that. So this is, as you can see, this is an amazing tool for searching Twitter for specific things. Of course, you can still search it that way, but this, for me, the fact that you can write code around it means you can automate it. You can get it to do things. You can even add the extra functionality of retweeting. Remember, we did that last week. Did we do the retweet last week? Where once you get the tweet, you can then just automatically retweet the tweet that you want. Okay, I don't think we did that, but I'll show you on the Tweepy API, and that can be your homework, right? So what you can do is that you do have the retweet here. All right, retweet, tweet ID. Let me see, manage tweet. I'm just gonna search here, retweet. Okay, it's not retweet like that. Let's see, tweet. Okay, that's a lot. Dish. But there is a there you go, retweet. There you go. All right. Okay, so there's a retweet functionality. You could actually just then code this inside of your specific tweet, and you get something around Helen Ziller, and you just say retweet, and then it retweets it. This is how they build those retweet bots on Twitter, if you've seen them, where they retweet everything related to a specific hashtag. But this is now, you can actually just retweet anything that's related to any search function. So if you wanted to build a retweet for project management, for example, you wanted to get for people that are into project management to follow you, then you can have your search functionality saying project management there. And then once you get the tweet ID, instead of building this, you can just say, retweet that tweet, and all you need is a tweet ID to retweet. Okay, so you just sort of say client.retweet, and you put in the tweet ID. It only takes in the tweet ID, and just like that, you've got a retweet bot. Okay, remember, you're limited to, a couple of tweets every 15 minutes, but you can write your program so that it doesn't go over. And I've seen accounts that have grown to thousands and thousands of followers just retweeting stuff and not even following anybody. So that's another way to build your retweet bot, but I'm not interested in retweeting because you never know what you're going to find. And the last thing you want is to retweet something like this, for example, which then is talking about things that maybe it doesn't go well with your brand. So what I would rather do is fetch the tweet, display it in my own app, okay, my own personal app, and then read the tweet first and decide. Let me go to the Twitter page that talks about the tweet. Then I can retweet from here if I've read the tweet and I like what it's saying. Or I can, if it's like a lead generation, I can then, look at that person over there. I can click on their user ID. I can DM them and tell them, yeah, I see you're looking for recommendations for CRM. Yeah, we're running a company that does this and this and this. Yes, we can definitely help you. Send them some links, and you'll be amazed how you can build your business just doing that, being able to get somebody immediately on Twitter when they ask for recommendations about something, or the first one to notice that tweet. Boom, you are responding to them and you're building your business that way. Okay, so this video is getting a little bit longer now. So what I'm going to do is that you've seen all the functions we've done. We're going to build on this next week, okay? We're going to build on this next week, and we're going to do I actually thought I would do that this week and build a Bootstrap application that will then allow you to manually enter your search parameters from the front end. And once you've entered the search parameters, and then it will run the search, and then it will display the tweets. Maybe we'll display 100, we'll display as many tweets as we find. And then there's a button that says retweet, or there's another button that says go to Twitter and read more about the tweet. There's another button that says, go to the user profile of the person who has done the tweet. Maybe there's another button that says DM that person something, and then it pulls up a modal. You can DM them directly, and you can build your own lead generation engine right here on Twitter. Okay, so I'll see you guys next week. If you think this is very interesting, make sure you subscribe and make sure that you're ready next week for that part of the tutorial.